All right, everyone, what is up? My name is Steven Michaels. This is the greatest Raiders show in the world. This is the Raiders Daily Podcast. Okay, so let's just briefly, because I really don't want to harp on this game at all. This Bucs game, the Raiders come off a devastating loss, just an embarrassing loss. It was just an ugly game as Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucs go into Vegas and completely embarrass the Raiders. So embarrassing that John Gruden said after the game that there's got to be changes on that defense, and there has to be. Now, before everyone gets excited about, maybe bringing in a big star in a trade, let's be real here. The Raiders don't have that much money. They probably have around maybe $7.5 million. Probably could get up to $8 million, I'm guessing, of money they could use. They don't have a ton of money. Now, they have draft picks, but, they're going to need a lot more than just one player to fix that defense. That defense is just terrible. That's the only way you can describe it. The scheme is not working, in my opinion. But also, the players got to do a better job. We can't always point the fingers at the coaches. Sometimes we got to say, hey, maybe the players aren't doing good either. I mean, Malik Collins was supposed to be the guy, the anchor of that defensive line. What has Malik Collins done for the Raiders? He hasn't done nothing. He's been really just disappear. He's like Casper the Ghost. He disappears when it's time to play. He does not do anything. And so, I mean, the Raiders, what they really need to do is give some of these other guys a chance. Mo Hurst should be getting more snaps. There's no doubt about that. He should be getting more snaps than Malik Collins. They have more success when Mo Hurst is in there. Jonathan Hankins, he has to step it up. Everyone has to step it up on that team. Carl Nassib was a guy that the Raiders paid a lot of money to come to the Raiders to be a defensive end, to help out Max Crosby, things like that. This guy has not lived up to his paycheck. Now, I will say, Carl Nassib is also playing with a broken toe right now, so you got to give him that. But even before his broken toe, he was not, lighting the world on fire over there. There's a reason why they took a flyer on a guy like David Irving, who hasn't played, really, in a year. So, will we ever see David Irving? I don't know. I think the Raiders should activate him for this next game we're about to talk about. I'll tell you that much. They got to start doing things differently, and I know they have, and they will be doing that this week in practice. Different guys are going to get different chances. Guys that maybe you have not seen that much of. Guys like Isaiah Johnson. This guy should be on the field more. Also, something I've been harping on for a while, I think a lot of fans also been saying, why is LaMarcus Joyner not a safety? Why they keep putting him at the nickel cornerback position? It makes no sense. Now, I know John Gruden and Paul Gunther, they'll say, well, listen, all these fans aren't coaches. They don't know what they're talking about. But listen, we all have eyes. Everyone in the world has eyes. When did LaMarcus Joyner have his best season? When he played with the Rams as a safety. That's where he should be. He should not be a nickel corner. Move this guy to safety, because guess what? Your safeties that you have right now, they are not working. Eric Harris is a great guy, but should he be your starting safety? No. That's just the way it is. Jeff Heath. Should he be a starting safety? No. This guy was on a special teams squad in Dallas. Eric Harris was a special teams guy with the New Orleans Saints. Those are facts. Now they're starters for the Raiders defense, and John Gruden can't figure out why the Raiders can't get interceptions, why they can't get pressure, because you don't have the right pieces there. But they do have a few pieces, and I do think if they did just a little bit different type of schemes here, they could at least stop the bleeding a little bit. These teams, Tom Brady could just throw it in the middle field anytime he wanted to last week. He really could. He had all the time in the world. He wasn't being pressured. And when that's the case, when there's no pressure on a quarterback, he's going to kill you. And that's exactly what happened. But it's been like that pretty much all season long. Their best game they had was against Kansas City. And what is so weird about that Tampa Bay game is their defense, the Raiders' defense, was playing Tom Brady like they are almost playing Patrick Mahomes. There are, pretty much the whole game, there are plays where Corey Littleton is a spy, and you have Jeff Heath just kind of being a spy. So you have two spies on Tom Brady, like the guy's going to go run for it. Come on, it's Tom Brady. The Raiders need to start doing different things in this scheme. What they really need to start doing is get more creative with their blitzes, because right now there is no creativity at all on that defense. You got LaMarcus Joyner, start sending them in on blitzes. They did it on the first possession for Tampa Bay, and LaMarcus Joyner got in the backfield and he stopped the running back. They need to do more of that. Cornerback blitzes. They need to do that. Now, I know the Raiders, they'll say, well, our secondary is not good enough to handle that. But guess what? If you think the guys out in the field are not good enough to handle sending a cornerback blitz, then it's time you start giving other guys a shot here. That's why I think you need to give more snaps to guys like Isaiah Johnson. You need Trayvon Mullen more on one-on-one situations instead of playing a zone defense. The Raiders, if you want to play Jeff Heath, send him on a blitz. That's what you need to do. I mean, you need to help out your defensive line. Because if they're not winning their one-on-one battles, then why not throw a couple stunts in there? Throw some linebacker blitzes. Do something to create some kind of pressure. But it seems like Paul Guenther, and I guess, he does have a point, he's always scared of, if they send a linebacker blitz, for example, up the middle. Let's say they send a double gap blitz right up the middle, and the other opposing team throws a screen pass. He's scared that, that screen pass will go for a touchdown for 80 yards. That could happen. But if your safeties are fast enough and your cornerbacks are aware and they can tackle, they can stop that. They can. They might get 6 or 7 yards, but that's about it. Or you take the chance that you get a sack and maybe a turnover, because that's what the Raiders need. But that game is over. And the fact is, the Raiders, if you take away that Kansas City Chiefs win, it's just been losses after losses. Come on. They lost their last 2 out of 3 games here. So, this is not good. The Raiders need to start stacking up wins. And I think, against Cleveland, which, by the way, I gotta warn Raider fans, remember, Cleveland is 5-2. Okay? The Raiders are 3-3. The Cleveland Browns are a better team than the Raiders. But the Raiders can beat the Cleveland Browns, and this is why. First of all, look, we already know Nick Chubb is out. Odell Beckham Jr. is out for Cleveland. Cleveland has an injury report right now. It does not look good. Now, we'll see what happens throughout the rest of the week. But, Myles Garrett, he hasn't been practicing. He says he's going to play, but he hasn't been practicing. Austin Hooper, he hasn't been practicing. Kareem Hunt is limited, pretty much. So Jarvis Landry, who I think might be a problem for the Raiders there, he is also hurt. He's got a rib injury. There's a lot of guys on there. A lot of guys on the Browns injury report that the Raiders need to exploit. Now, looking at this Cleveland Browns team, how do the Raiders win? Well, the Raiders win this game if they can establish a run. And this is something that the Raiders have yet to do all season long. Where is Josh Jacobs? Where is the guy that played last season that was just destroying people, that was hard to get down, that was getting, 5 yards a carry, 5 tough yards? Jacobs is one of the worst running backs in the NFL right now. He's on the bottom of the list. This guy has yet to break 100 yards in a game so far. That's the reality, and I don't know why. Now, the offensive line, I know, last week against Tampa Bay, obviously it was a big mess, but they're not terrible, this offensive line. They're really not. Now, when Brandon Parker came in that game last week, if you were sitting next to me, I would have told you, hey, by the way, the Raiders are about to lose right now. But anyways, Against Cleveland, let's hope Trent Brown can return. Now let's hope he's motivated to return. Let's hope he's motivated to play, because the Raiders can't really do much with this guy. Even though deep down inside in that organization they might have some kind of hostility towards each other, the Raiders are not going to cut the guy because they're not going to eat that money. And, the Raiders really need him. He's a monster. The guy's huge. And he does make the Raiders better. He is a good player when he's motivated. We all watched that against the Kansas City Chiefs. So if he can play, maybe, Josh Jacobs can run behind him. They got to figure a way to get Josh Jacobs going against the Kansas City Chiefs. Against the Cleveland Browns. Sorry. The Cleveland Browns, they're pretty good against the run. I believe they're ranked 5th in the NFL against the run. So that's why the Raiders in this game need to find creative ways to get the run game going. Not just for this game, but for this season. And this is why I think they need to do more things. They need to get Devontae Booker more involved. They need to start doing more jet sweeps, to put that fear in the opposing defense that, hey, this team can run the ball. Because if you're just sitting back there in shotgun all the time, all of these teams they're just going to play zone. They're just going to double everyone, and it's going to be too predictable with Derek Carr just sitting back there. So you need some kind of threat for a running game. That's why I say, hey, listen, you have Henry Ruggs. The guy's the fastest guy on the team, right? Why not, do some reverses with Henry Ruggs? Why can't you get him more involved? Throw him in the Wildcat, for crying out loud. Do some crazy things to get the other team on their toes, to make them feel like, hey, they can run the ball and do it successfully. Now, like I said, Cleveland, they are good against the run. But if you can establish a run game against Cleveland, you will be able to throw off them, because Cleveland, just like the Raiders, they are not good at stopping the pass. They're terrible at it, actually. They are ranked 27th in the NFL at stopping the pass. So the Cleveland Browns defense, although they got Myles Garrett, you got to take care of him. He says he's playing, even though he hasn't been practicing. Derek Carr is going to be able to hit some guys wide open in this game. This looks like a game that could be a shootout, because the Raiders' defense is so bad, and the Browns, like I said, they're not good at stopping teams. They're really not. They are just not good at stopping teams throwing the football. Like I said, they're ranked 27th. The Raiders, by the way, we all know about their pass defense. They're ranked 28th in the NFL. The Raiders' rush defense is ranked 15th. But the Browns, they're ranked 5th in the NFL. So they do a good job at stopping the run. There's no doubt about that. But the Raiders, I think, with Jacobs, with Booker, if they get creative, they can get a run game going. And either way, I just think this is a good matchup for the Raiders. I really do. I've been waiting for that game that Darren Waller just goes off. We really haven't seen that game yet. This is the game. I thought it was going to happen a couple of weeks ago, but I'm almost positive this is a game where Darren Waller gets open a lot. Because if you look at the Browns, they struggle a lot against tight ends. And now you're going up against Darren Waller. So and by the way, this goes for the Raiders as well. I think Baker Mayfield is going to be throwing to the tight ends a lot against the Raiders. So both teams are going to use their tight ends, but Darren Waller, in my opinion, is one of the best tight ends in the National Football League, and I think will make a huge difference in this game. And Henry Ruggs, he'll be there. He will be there for those big bombs. I promise you that. Now, Henry Ruggs is not the greatest route runner in the world. The Raiders knew that. This guy's not, he's just not. He's not the best route runner. In a couple of years, he's going to improve, and his game is going to improve, and who knows? He could end up being one of the best wide receivers ever. We don't know. But for right now, he's not the best route runner. But what he can do is burn you. He can burn anyone. Derek Carr's got to make sure, though, he does not overthrow him, because he did it again against Tampa Bay last week. Derek Carr overthrew Henry Ruggs, and I just don't know how you do that. But he can't overthrow him. He's got to get good chemistry with him. And, it's going to be there. That play is going to be there. Henry Ruggs running a go route against the Cleveland Browns defense. It's going to be there. Like I said, the Raiders defense, they got to be creative. It's actually a good time for the Raiders, for Gruden and Paul Gunther and Marinelli. Who knows who's really running the show there on defense. But either way, they're giving other guys opportunities. They're going to be trying other things, they claim anyways, other blitzes, different kinds of packages. That is good, because now Cleveland does not know what to expect. You know, they're watching game film of the Raiders, but the Raiders could be in a whole different type of defense. Different packages, different blitzes, things the Browns do not have on tape. So that goes advantage Raiders. Now, like I said, the Browns are they're not a terrible team. They're really not. The Cleveland Browns, like I said, they have a better record than the Raiders. But the whole thing about the Cleveland Browns is, I mean, when you look at they're 5-2, like I said, but when you look at the teams, okay, they have played. They got blown out against the Ravens, 38-6. They beat the Bengals, 35-30. You know, I'm just going through the games here. You know, they killed Washington, 34-20, and they killed the Cowboys, and that's when everyone started, really thinking the Browns were for real. But little do we know, the Cowboys are just terrible. 49-38. They did take care of business against the Colts. They beat them 32-23. But then they got destroyed against the Steelers 38-7. 38-7. And then, of course, they're coming off that win against the Bengals. But, that's the Bengals. The Bengals with their rookie Joe Burrows there. I mean, that guy was lighting up that Browns defense. Think about what Derek Carr is going to do to that Browns defense. Now, the Browns end up winning that game 37-34, but I'm telling you right now, I mean, if you compare both the Bengals offense to the Raiders offense, who are you taking? Because I know who I'm taking. I'm taking the Raiders offense. So if the Bengals were able to do that against the Browns, the Raiders should be able to throw up 40 points on this team easily. Like I said, I expect a shootout, but I just think the Raiders at the end of the day will be able to score more points. It's just the Browns, like I said, their defense is terrible, just like the Raiders. But without Nick Chubb, without Odell Beckham, those are two big pieces they will not have. And the Raiders are going in there, fairly healthy. Now, I wish Bryan Edwards was playing, and he could play, but it looks like the Raiders are going to hold him back another week. I would throw him in there just because Zay Jones hasn't really done much at all. And Bryan Edwards looks like he was doing a pretty good job before he got injured. But the Raiders are being cautious. They don't want to ruin this guy's whole career, so they're going to ease him back in when they know he is 100% good to go. But he could play, technically, I'm saying. I'm not saying he's not. He's not playing, according to John Gruden, but I'm saying he could, if the Raiders would let him. He could play in this game, and I think the Raiders should, because they need to win this game. I'm telling you that right now. This is a big game for the Raiders. This is a big game. Who would have thought, looking at this schedule, that this Cleveland Browns game would be so big? But it is. I mean, the Raiders are 3-3 right now. That's great. But do we really want a team that wins 7 games, or do we want a team that's actually a playoff contender? Because the Raiders started off the season beating Carolina on the road, as you know. They won 34-30. They probably could have won more than that. And then they won against the Saints. Everyone was feeling good, including me. I thought, hey, listen, this Raiders team, they look like they might be for real this year. And then they play the New England Patriots, who are not a very good team at all, and they just get demolished. Then they follow that up against the Bills, and they don't look good at all, and they lose against the Bills. But then they beat the Chiefs. So, okay, maybe, the last 2 weeks, the Raiders were just off their game, right? Because they beat the Chiefs. But they follow that up with a loss 45-20 against the Bucs. I mean, come on now. Come on now. So, I mean, you got one win out of the last 3 games. I think I said 2 before, but you got one win, basically. You beat the Chiefs, but then you lose against the Bucs. You lose against the Bills. You lose against the Patriots. Come on now. Come on. That's just unacceptable. They got to start stacking up some wins right now to turn this season around. I know what you're saying. Yeah, they're only 3-3. The sky's not falling. I get it. But when, you only won one game out of the last 3 games, that's not good either. The Raiders need to start stacking up victories instead of stacking up losses. That's been a problem with this organization now for I don't know how many years. They don't stack up wins. They stack up losses. They get a big win, now and then, but then they follow it up with 3 straight consecutive losses. They cannot do that here. They cannot. They got to take care of business on the road. They got to go into Cleveland and come out of there with a victory. And then, after that, who knows? Maybe the Raiders can make a trade for someone, by giving away a draft pick. Maybe someone that can help them in their secondary or someone on their defensive line. Hell, even a wide receiver at this point. Anyone the Raiders could go get and help them out. As far as David Irving goes, we don't know. Obviously, he's not in football shape just yet, or they were to activate him last week. But they could just throw him in this week, and maybe he gets a couple sacks. Because this game against Cleveland, I'm telling you right now, is going to come down to whoever makes a big play on defense. It's going to come down to whoever can get a turnover. And the Raiders need a turnover. That defense needs to create some turnovers. They need to get some interceptions. Remember, against the Kansas City Chiefs game, what was the big thing that happened in that game that really pretty much swerved the momentum the Raiders' way and sailed them to a victory? The Jeff Heath interception. So that's what they need against Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns. And I'm telling you, Baker Mayfield will throw some terrible passes now and then. The Raiders got to take advantage of that. All of these guys got to get their hands up in his face, make him force a throw he does not want to throw, and get an interception. They got to figure out a way to get some kind of pass rush and sack Baker Mayfield. They got to start going for the ball, start forcing some fumbles here. This game is going to come down to that. It's going to come down to that. Can the Raiders create some turnovers on defense, and when they get the ball on offense, can they convert on third downs? That's going to be huge. And can they score touchdowns, not field goals? Because that's been killing them in the last couple of weeks, by the way. That has been killing them for the last 4 games, is settling for 3. They got to stop settling for 3. When you get in that red zone, when you get inside the 20, you need to get a touchdown. Because these field goals are not winning you football games. But you know what will win you football games? Touchdowns. And what did John Gruden say right at the beginning of the season? What was the problem last year? He said we settled for 3 too much. We didn't punch the ball in. We didn't get enough touchdowns. Well, right now, you're doing that again. We're all talking about the defense being bad because they are, but we also got to address the offense. The offense is doing a pretty good job this season, but they are leaving points off the board. They really are. So they got to start putting, this is the way it's going to have to go, unfortunately, until this defense can get fixed. Now, a lot of people say you can't fix a defense in the middle of the season. Yeah, you really can't. You can't change. It's really hard to bring an outsider in and change the entire defense. But you can change the personnel. You can change the players. You can change, the play calling. You can do that within. But bringing an outsider in, bringing them in, and bringing a new guy in and telling these guys, after 8 weeks to learn a whole new defensive playbook is pretty difficult to do if you're a serious contender. But you can tinker with what you already got. You can install more blitzes. You can change, like I said, players at different positions. That's what the Raiders need to do. And this game, they need to be more aggressive. I liked against Kansas City. Look how aggressive they were in some of those plays on that game. They need to be like that, but they need to be consistent. That's what we need to see out of this Raiders team more than anything. We need to see a consistent team on defense and on offense. They need to put up points because that's how they're going to beat the Cleveland Browns. They are going to beat them by stopping Kareem Hunt. You got to stop the run first. You got to tackle well, and you got to force interceptions. And I'm telling you, on offense, the Raiders will be too much for Cleveland. They will not be able to stop the Raiders. I am telling you that right now. It will be impossible for Cleveland. I mean, unless all of a sudden 85 Bears show up, the Raiders should be able to score very easily on this team. Now, if they were smart, they would have these 12, very long drives, 12 play, take 5 minutes off the clock, drives that end and touchdowns, so the Raiders don't have to score 40 points, so they can only score, 27 points because they chew up the clock so much, all while maintaining the tempo of the game. And then, guess what? Your defense isn't on the field that much, and you could walk out of Cleveland with a 27-13 win. I mean, technically, they probably could do that against Cleveland, but if the big play is there, obviously, Derek Carr's not going to say, well, Henry Ruggs is wide open, but I'm not going to throw to him. I'm going to, check it down to the alligator for 8 yards instead. No, he's going to go for a touchdown, obviously. That's why I think it will be a high-scoring game, but I hope, because the way the Raiders win this game, if they really, really want to win it, is having long drives that end in touchdowns, and then when they keep their defense on the sidelines, because their defense is that bad right now. But I'm looking forward to seeing the defense. I want to see what changes this defense actually made. I want from the scheme part and from the player-wise, I want to see what they're up to. And we won't know. Trust me, they're not going to be telling the reporters what, who's playing in what position now, what kind of blitzes they're going to be doing. They're not telling anyone that. We're going to see that on Sunday if anything changes. So hopefully it does. Hopefully this Raiders team is more aggressive, and hopefully they can take care of business on the road, get a victory here, and then the Raiders got the Chargers next. Then they got the Broncos, and then the Chiefs. Remember, they have 3 divisional games after the Cleveland game. That's why this game's so important. You got to win this game, and if the Raiders can win the next 2, they'll be in good shape heading into that big game, in primetime, by the way, against the Kansas City Chiefs, which will be in Vegas. That will be a huge game. The Raiders already beat them. They have a blueprint on how to beat them. Can the Raiders do it again? But that game will be meaningless if the Raiders lose against the Browns. Because if the Raiders lose against the Browns, that tells me this team is not a serious contender. That tells me this team is a 6-7-win team. They're not making the playoffs, basically. This is the game. This is a game that can turn around the Raiders season. This is it. They just got embarrassed. Now it's time to show the world that they're going to get back on track, take care of business in Cleveland, then take care of business against the LA Chargers, which LA is pretty much the Raiders' house. Anyways, take care of business there and see where we go. See what we can get from that. And hopefully this defense looks better. But like I said, they're 3-3. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt right now that they are going to change. That defense is going to change. And the offense is going to start scoring touchdowns. And maybe we can start taking this team for real again, like we did when they beat Kansas City. But they have to prove it to all of you, Raider Nation. All right, I will talk to you guys next week. And we'll see where we're at. Hopefully the Raiders can do it, and I know they can. Take care of business against the Cleveland Browns, and then start from there. 4-3 is not so bad. My name is Steven Michaels. You just got done listening to the greatest Raiders radio show you ever listened to in your life. This is the Raiders Daily.